When I think about peak content, I think about Morbius, I think about Norm of the North, I think about, nah seriously, jokes aside, I think about Breaking Bad. It is the most incredible show ever made. It has one of the best stories ever written, so many memorable characters, and so many amazing scenes. If you never watched this show, what are you doing here? Go watch it, I beg you. This show was created by no other than Vince Gilligan himself. Let me tell you how much I would love to do things to this man. I mean, look at him. Don't tell me you just don't wanna... You know... Anyways, this show has won 92 awards. 92 awards. Giving the show so many awards was probably the only good time the Academies made a good decision. It probably deserves more awards than that though, like a Morbius award, but 92 is still quite impressive. But have you ever thought about why this show is so beloved by society? Why there's so many memes made out of it? Why Walter Jr. is so hot? Well, let me tell you why. But for real, have you seen him? Oh my god! The story of this show is about a high school chemistry teacher named Walter Hartwell White. He has been diagnosed with lung cancer and his life changed forever after his diagnosis. He started to cook methamphetamine, which is a drug that looks like glass and is crystallized. He wants to make money out of it to provide for his family after his death. He knows how to cook it, but he doesn't know how to sell it because it's kind of illegal, you know? So he gets the help from one of his old students, Jesse Pinkman. Jesse has been in the meth game for some time now, so he kinda knows how this game works, but this is where the problem began. This little meth cooking adventure created some enemies, other dealers went causing trouble at them, and the DA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, started to look out for them. So, during the events of the show, stuff started to happen to them and it changed them, which is why the show is called Breaking Bad. The story itself is such a good idea on paper, and it has been well made on screen. Vince Gilligan is such a genius, and he wrote one of the best stories ever. But what also made the show so good is its characters. There's a bunch of cool characters in this show that are making the story more interesting, so let's talk about them. Other than our two main protagonists, there's a bunch of interesting characters. Let's start with Skylar White. She's basically some kind of Karen. She is Mr. White's wife, and she loves to sing happy birthday to her boss, Ted. Mr. and Mrs. White have two children, a boy named Walter Jr. / Finn, and a little girl named Ollie. They are pretty much the reason why Mr. White first started cooking meth, getting money to give to them when he'll be gone. Skylar has a sister, whose name is Marie, a woman who doesn't know the difference between rocks and minerals and who loves to shoplift. Her husband, Hank Schrader, is an agent of the DA. You know where this is going, aren't you? Yes, Walter's own brother-in-law is looking for him without knowing he was right in front of him this whole time. In another pair, we have Jesse's friends Badger, Skinny Pete, and Combo. They're all pretty much just some junkies whose lives were also changed throughout the events of the series. There is also Saul Goodman, a special lawyer who also has a spin-off show about him called Better Call Saul, which was also written by Vince Gilligan, the legend, and another guy named Peter Gould. Better Call Saul is also a masterpiece of a show, and maybe in the future I will talk about it on this channel, we'll see that. But for now we're talking about Breaking Bad, so let's continue on that. We also meet this Sigma named Mike Hermantraut, who's a guy that cleans up everyone's messes. He's also a really cool grandpa. On the other hand, the antagonists are also memorable and badass. We first got Tuco Salamanca, who has some little angry issues lol. We also got Tuco's cousins, Leonel and Marco Salamanca, aka the twins. We then got the one, the only, Gustavo Fring. What a handsome man, isn't he? He's portrayed by none other than Giancarlo Esposito himself. One of my personal favorite actors, Gustavo, or Gus,
you can call me
call
Gus.
him like that, is the business manager of a chicken brand restaurant called, pardon my French, Los Pollos Hermanos, who also hides a drug empire on the side. Then there's other characters that would help or cause trouble to our characters like Crazy 8, Hector Salamanca, Victor, Tyrus, Todd, Lydia, and Uncle Jack. But my video would take too long if I went deeply into every character of this show, because there's too many of them. There are so many lovable characters, and it is one of this show's best qualities. One of the reasons we love to watch a show is to see its characters grow and evolve or change. Sometimes we forget about it because some companies don't really care anymore. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Marvel. But in this show, almost every character has a noticeable development. The ones that are the most important to talk about here are Mr. White, Jesse, Skyler, and Hank. First of all, if the main protagonist of a story doesn't have a proper character development, why should we even care about them? We start to love them as soon as they evolve throughout life experiences. That's why we love Mr. White. He isn't just some random dude cooking meth, no. He is a simple citizen, becoming one of the most searched people of all time. He's even becoming the villain of his own show at a certain point. His character development is the reason why the show exists. Without it, it would just have been some random story about a random dude in New Mexico. The way he became known as Heisenberg is what started all this. On the other hand, we have Jesse, who had such a depressive and twisted life. He started as a junkie meth cook who went to rehab and then started to take drugs again while being used and manipulated by Walter. He lost 2 loved ones and got used as a slave for quite a while. How tough does that sound? Then we have Skyler, who started as a lovely wife and a mother, and became an accomplice to Walter's crimes while living a depression. Personally, I don't really like Skyler as a character, but I gotta admit that I love her character development and I respect some decisions that she took during the show. Then we have Hank Schrader, Walter's own brother-in-law. He spent his whole time of the show trying to find Heisenberg without knowing that he was right in front of him this whole time. He also went through a lot of things during the series because of Walter, and we get to follow his journey to find who this Heisenberg is. The aspect of character development is one of the show's biggest qualities, and it proves how well written these characters are. We are building emotion towards these characters by following their journey and hoping they accomplish their objective. If the viewers are able to build attachment towards the characters, even if it's hatred, it shows that the writers did a good job. Like I've said before, Breaking Bad is such a good show because of its characters, but I didn't talk about why its story is such a masterpiece. Let's go season by season. Season 1, Walter gets his diagnosis. He starts cooking meth with an old student of his to make money to give to his family after his death. While this is a short summary of season 1's story, these 7 first episodes aren't just about this guy cooking some methamphetamine. It's also about the first experience of breaking the law, the feeling of breaking bad. Walt is dying. He wants to feel alive for the rest of his time on this planet, and he does it by breaking the law and doing the things that normally people wouldn't do. By the end of season 1, he realizes that he entered such a dangerous world, the world of drug dealers. His journey throughout season 1 made him a new person, but not quite accomplished. There, we enter season 2, where he discovers this drug dealing world. He enters a new world half blind. He is the best cook that this country has seen, and he sees it, so he sells his product to make a good amount of money. This season is 13 episodes long, just like season 3 and 4, but the amount of things that happens during these seasons that impacts the plotline is just incredible. If you thought that not a lot of things happened during the first season, then I can't believe you would say the same for season 2, 3 and the rest of them. It's not just a story about an old guy cooking meth. It's a story about a father. It's a story about a teacher. It's a story about a civilian who breaks the laws. And it's the story of a mentor. While being this famous meth cooking guy that everyone knows as Heisenberg, he has a life on the side with his family. He has to hide all the stuff he's doing to them, because if they knew what he was doing, it would create such chaos in his family. But not only is this story not just about Walter, but it's also about Jesse and Skyler and Hank and Marie, and I could go on and on. Like I've said before, the story isn't just about one guy, it's about every character that is impacted by Walt's journey. You follow their story and you get to understand every character's motivation. It creates a connection between you, the viewers, and the fictional humans right in front of you. So we finished this season with Skylar discovering Walt's secret and divorcing him. Oh, and there's a plane crash in the sky. I won't enter into every moment that changed Walt throughout the season because this video would be too long and you would get bored watching me talking about the story because I assume you already have seen the story and you pretty much know what happens. I'm just here to explain why I think it's such a masterpiece. So, in season 3, Walt finally finds a place to cook his meth and make money while living a stable life. But as in every story, things happen that impacts the characters. In this season, we follow Walt throughout his divorce and he tries to get his wife back. We also see the beginning of his insanity. Slowly and slowly, he becomes a cold character on the outside, but we can still feel his fear to lose his closed ones. Though we've seen Walt's character development during the first 2 seasons, since he left Jane to her death in the end of season 2, in season 3, we are getting a big change of decision making. He starts to make more insane decisions with bigger impacts on his life and on the life of the people around him. This season ends up with Gail's murder. Gail was a scientist, just like Walt, who had so much appreciation for Walt, but his death was the result of a sacrifice that Walt made Jesse do. The fact that we feel bad for Gail and Jesse in this last scene shows us that the direction that the writers took really played with our emotions and our brain. We can see that the story is well written because it makes us cry and it makes us debate on, was this a good decision or could it have happened differently? The fact that we're even asking ourselves these questions demonstrates to us that we feel connections to these characters and that we follow their questionable journey with attachment or hatred. In season 4, which is my personal favorite season by the way, even if I love them all equally, we even go deeper into Walt's insanity. We follow a paranoiac man who thinks everything is about him, while following the depression that Jesse goes through after killing Gail. Walt is afraid of Gus and wants to kill him, but it seems so impossible to do because Gustavo is untouchable. During the events of this season, we follow the tension between all the characters like Walt and Gus or Hank and Marie, etc. We also go deeper into Gustavo's character's history and development. The tension that Giancarlo Esposito created while playing this character is exceptional. He is probably one of the best antagonists ever created just because we understand his backstory, his motivations, and his decisions. He is so menacing and cold, but we still can relate to this character. When he enters a scene, we can feel the tension just by his look. Giancarlo Esposito deserves every recognition possible for his performance as Gustavo Fring. Then, there's also Skylar, who is now invested in Walter's new career as a med cook. She helps him on the financial issues that could affect their family. I think we see the biggest character developments in this season just because it takes its time to build up the events that will impact the character's personality. Now if we go back to the storyline, the ending of this season is the bridge to an evolution of Walter White. His enemy is no more and he can do whatever he wants now because he won. Some people would argue with me if I said that this is where Heisenberg took 100% of his personality because they would say that it happened way before, but I respect these ways of thinking and I even agree with some of them. But from my point of view, this is where the point turned for him and where he could be this new guy with no scary man watching him in his back and fulfill his destiny. Then we get the last season, divided in 2 parts. The first one is the installment of Walt's new business directives and the other part is Hank's chase after his brother-in-law. We get to follow how Walt would handle his business trying to build something like Gus built. Watching him trying to recreate what Gus made is really enjoyable and we wish him to succeed even after all the bad decisions he made since these last season. But his life really took a bad turn when Hank discovered Walt being this Heisenberg he was looking for all this time, while taking a shit. But how does this show conclude? Is it a good conclusion? Does it satisfy the viewers with the time they spent watching this show? Let's talk about it. The last episode is called Felina, which is the combination of the chemical symbols of iron, lithium, and sodium, which could be understood as blood, mud, and tears. This epic conclusion follows the last journey of Walt, ensuring his heritage gets to his family. So he delivers his money to his old business partners so they can give it to Walter Jr. when he turns 18 without alerting the authorities. Then he finds out that Jesse is still alive and captivated somewhere. So his last mission is to save him from these neo that use him, but he won't go there before preparing his last mastermind's plan and say bye to Holly and Skyler for one last time. So he achieves his plan and saves Jesse. Then he dies on the ground in the meth lab where Jesse used to cook meth for these neo. So what can we understand from this ending? The first thing we understand is the fact that all this time Walter said that he was doing all of this for his family, but actually he did it for himself. We understand that he had fun breaking the law and that it made him feel alive even if his days were counted. Also, we see Jesse have a quoted happy ending while Walt has a quoted bad ending. He finally got what he deserved. While it's basically what we would think, I will disagree with you, and here's why. I think that Jesse actually had a bad ending and Walt got an happy ending. First of all, yes, Jesse escaped from this prison he was in, but now, as we have seen in the El Camino movie, the police are looking for him, and he still has to make a new life for himself. So, his story isn't really finished, but technically, if we only talk about this show, then yes, I will agree that it is a good ending. Now, let's talk about why I think Walter got an happy ending. Yes, he died, but dying doesn't mean it's bad. He died happy, he accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish. He died knowing his son would get the money he made. He died knowing Jesse escaped. He died knowing his family would live a normal life again without him. So, is it better to die in happiness or to live in darkness? I would personally choose the first option. His death is also perfect in my opinion. Firstly because he died in a place similar to where all the things that happened to him started, but also because of the music that ended the show. The song playing at the end of Breaking Bad is called Baby Blue by Badfinger. The lyrics in this ending match the situation where Walt is at the end. So, to answer the question, does the ending satisfy the viewers with the time they spent watching the show? Yes, it does. You feel the accomplishment that Walt feels while dying on the floor, so you're not disappointed by the final. And the final shot is so beautifully made, it became a reference for a lot of shows after that, which is awesome. Now that we know the storyline and the characters pretty well, let's talk about the arguments that make me believe that Breaking Bad is one of the best TV shows ever created, if not the best one. First of all, the story is insanely good. It is an interesting story that makes us rethink about what life is and what's really good or bad. Seeing the choices that Walt makes after his diagnosis makes us argue with ourselves about the bad things we do for good reasons. And as the story goes on, he starts to make more and more bad decisions to finally become an insane man that thinks he takes a good decision for good reasons. Walt actually becomes the antagonist of his own story, and it is well demonstrated throughout the show. The writer took many risks and it made a good story at the end. Also, the characters are always evolving, and I personally think it is one of the most important aspects of a show. The characters never stay the same during the events of the story, and they always learn from their mistakes, or they don't, lol. Then there's the acting. Every single actor in this show does an excellent job of portraying their character. Giancarlo creates tension just by walking in a room. Aaron Paul makes us feel compassion for Jesse, and Bryan Cranston scares us and makes us love Walter at the same time. Without their beautiful acting skills, the show would feel just like Metastasis. Nah, just kidding, Metastasis is peak, just like Morbius. But another thing that makes Breaking Bad what it is the directing skills. The shots in this series is amazing. Even if it was made a lot of years ago, it is still beautiful to look at. I do think that the cinematography is better in Better Call Saul, but it is still insanely good today. The dialogue is also really chilling, another proof that the writers did an amazing job. Every line that Gus or Walt says are really cold and I love it. Then there's the ambient sounds. They used music and ambient sound effects to create tensions or suspenses, and it puts us in such an amazing mood and it keeps us captivated by what's happening. Also, this series makes us think. The moral can be interpreted differently depending from your opinion about the story. You could say that the story is about the consequences of drugs in people's lives, or it could be about self-acceptance of death. For me personally, I think the story is about freedom. When Walt discovered that he was about to die, he realized he spent too much time afraid of what life could do to him. But as we know, he's about to die. He now feels more alive than he ever did just by doing the things he was told not to do. He is free to choose whatever he wants to do with the rest of his life. When he takes a decision that involves something bad happening and breaking the law, but he does it for a good reason, it makes the viewer question the decision they took in their life, and it makes them think about what if they did that differently, even if it meant to have to break the law. We're always questioning the good and bad during the series, and even if we could say that the series is called Breaking Bad because Walt is breaking bad, there is also a place to debate about if the decision he took were the good ones. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the beauty of Breaking Bad. There is nothing here. We can move on to the conclusion. Vince Gilligan has created one of the reasons why I'm still alive today. My love for the Breaking Bad universe is insane. Breaking Bad is my favorite series of all time. The story is incredible, the characters are all interesting to follow, the visuals and the sounds are really cool, the acting is extraordinary, and the meaning behind the story will be in my head for the rest of my life. I will probably never love another show in my life as much as I love Breaking Bad. The emotions that I felt while watching the show for the first time will always be remembered, and if I had to go back in time, the first thing I would do is to rewatch this series like it's the first time. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in another bad critic of mine.